At 11 o'clock, our eyes fell upon the walls and columns of Baalbek, a noble ruin whose history is a sealed book. It has stood there for thousands of years, a wonder and admiration for travelers. But who built it, or when it was built, are questions that may never be answered. One thing is very sure, though: such grandeur of design and such grace of execution as one sees in the temples of Baalbek have not been equaled or even approached in any work of men's hands that has been built within 20 centuries past. Mark Twain, The Innocents Abroad. The city of Baalbek, known in ancient times as Heliopolis, was situated on one of the most important trade routes of the ancient world, between Damascus and Tyre in eastern Lebanon. It reached its peak during the Roman years, between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD. The Romans built an extraordinary temple complex at Baalbek consisting of 3 separate temples, one for Jupiter, one for Bacchus, and one for Venus. This period marked a golden age for Baalbek, as it prospered as a major religious center within the Roman province of Syria. However, Lebanese journalist Maghi Ghali notes, Baalbek's 300 years of Roman rule is overshadowed by its 10,000 years of continuous settlement. She is correct. Before the Roman temples sprang up, there were already archaeological treasures at Baalbek, whose construction involved building technologies that supposedly did not exist at the time. Martin Gray, author of Secret Sacred Sites, states, "Long before the Romans conquered the site and built their enormous temple of Jupiter, long even before the Phoenicians constructed a temple to the god Baal, there stood at Baalbek the largest stone block construction found in the entire world." Yes, you heard that right. By the time the Romans began constructing a massive temple for Jupiter, the stone terraces were already in place at Baalbek, built by unknown hands. Archaeologists who examined the terraces were convinced they were much older than the Roman structures. With this in mind, it is beyond strange that Baalbek is not mentioned even once in ancient texts. The Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, and Macedonians all passed through the Bekaa Valley, but none of them recorded a sanctuary at Baalbek. The Bible also does not refer to it. When we compare the ruins of Baalbek with those of many ancient cities that we visited in Italy, Greece, Egypt, and in other parts of Africa and Asia, we cannot help thinking them to be the remains of the boldest plan we ever saw attempted in architecture. Is it not strange, then, that the age and the undertaker of the works, in which solidity and duration have been so remarkably consulted, should be a matter of such obscurity? From the time when this was first written, in the 50s of the 18th century, until today, nothing was added to dispel the obscurity that envelops the origin of this temple city. The excavations undertaken there brought no solution to the problem of its origin or the nature of its cult. Immanuel Velikovsky, from Collected Essays. In the spring of 1872, Countess Lydia A. de Pashkov was traveling through Lebanon and came across a caravan near the Baalbek complex. Inside, it was none other than Madame Helena Blavatsky. The Countess recalls, "I knew Madame Blavatsky could do strange things with the spirits, and I asked her to find out what the monument was. We waited until night. She drew a circle, and we went in it. We built a fire and put much incense on it. Then she said many spells. Then she pointed with her wand at the monument, and we saw a great ball of white flame. Then Madame Blavatsky commanded the spirit to appear of the person to whom the monument was reared. Soon a cloud of vapor arose and obscured the little moonlight there was. The cloud took the indistinct shape of an old man with a beard, and a voice came, as it seemed, from a great distance through the image. He said the monument was once the altar of a temple that had long disappeared. It was reared to a god that had long since gone to another world." "Who are you?" asked Madame Blavatsky. "I am Hero, one of the priests of the temple," said the voice. Then Madame Blavatsky commanded him to show us the place as it was when the temple stood. He bowed, and for one instant we had a glimpse of the temple and of a vast city filling the plain as far as the eye could reach. Then it was gone, and the image faded away. Countess Lydia A. de Pashkov. Ghost Stories Galore, A Night of Many Wonders at Second Hand in the 8th Avenue Lamasery. The Trilithon. Three of the largest worked monoliths in the world are incorporated into the northwest wall of the terrace. Known as the Trilithon, the wonder of three stones, these monoliths were transported from a quarry located approximately a kilometer from the temple site. The Trilithon forms the sixth visible layer of the wall. Each stone measures, on average, an astonishing 64 feet in length, with a height of 14 feet 6 inches and a thickness of 12 feet. They are estimated to weigh a staggering 800 tons each. Michel Alouf, the former curator of the ruins, notes that, in spite of their immense size, they are so accurately placed in position and so carefully joined that it is almost impossible to insert a needle between them. No description will give an exact idea of the bewildering and stupefying effect of these tremendous blocks on the spectator. Alan Alford, Gods of the New Millennium. Chapter 3, Signs of the Gods. To this day, no evidence has been found to suggest who built the Trilithon at Baalbek or when. This is particularly strange, given that the subject is not minor, but involves stone megaliths that dwarf even the grand Egyptian pyramids in scale. Unlike Egypt, Baalbek has no river, and the terrain between the quarry and the terraces is hilly and rocky. There is no sandy plain to drag the stone blocks across. It is inconceivable how such an immense load was transported to the construction site. Baalbek scholar Friedrich Raget suggests that the Trilithon stones were first cut from the bedrock using metal picks. They were then transported to the site by placing them on sleds resting on cylindrical wooden rollers. However, the reliefs depicting the movement of heavy weights in Egypt and Assyria show individual pieces that are an estimated 100 tons in weight. The movement of 1,000-ton blocks would create insurmountable difficulties for the suggested pulley and roller system. One French scholar calculated that to move a 1,000-ton block, no less than 40,000 men would have been needed, making the logistics almost inconceivable on the small track to the village. Andrew Collins, New Dawn magazine. Not only were these multi-ton blocks delivered from the quarry, but they were also raised to a height of about 7 meters, the equivalent of a 2-story building. It is unclear why such enormous monoliths were necessary when smaller stone slabs could have sufficed, simplifying and speeding up construction. It is interesting to note that the limestone courses that make up the outer podium base, which of course includes the Trilithon, are heavily pitted by wind and sand erosion, while the rest of the Temple of Jupiter still possesses comparatively smooth surfaces. This is a clear sign that the largest stones of Baalbek are far older than the Roman constructions. The Quarry. Near the terraces, 2 additional stone blocks were found, for reasons unknown, left unused during construction. Another worked monolith remains in the quarry. Its purpose is a mystery, as the terrace construction was already complete. The Arabs call it Hajar el-Kublai, southern stone, but it is traditionally known as the stone of the pregnant woman. As is often the case with ancient names, there are several theories about it. The simplest one is that it refers to some local belief according to which touching its surface would increase fertility, as occurs in other places. But there is also a legend that tells of a mysterious pregnant woman who offered to move the stone in exchange for support for herself and her unborn child. Jorge Alvarez, La Brújula Verde. Surprisingly, researchers have found another massive block of stone in the vicinity. This one remains partially buried and has the following dimensions: 19.6 meters in length, 6 meters in width, and about 5.5 meters in height. Researchers believe that the weight of this enormous stone block is around 1,650 tons, which would place it as the largest known stone block from antiquity. The question is, why did they stop the construction? There is little in Baalbek, Easter Island, Peru, or Egypt to show a gradual development of so advanced a culture or civilization. They, or at least their megalithic stonework, appear to have been ready-made, as though a colony was set up directly, complete, a going concern. In Baalbek, it has been shown that the work was never completed, and the largest stone still lies in the quarry. On Easter Island, a similar great stone, a statue, still lies in the quarry where it was being sculptured, in a depression from which great power manipulation would be required to move it. Something suddenly terminated the work of Baalbek. I do not say that it was the very same something, but the epoch is certainly of the same order of time, and there are elements in common: Easter Island, Peru, Baalbek, Egypt, all with screaming evidence of sudden, overwhelming disaster happening to a race of beings who handled rocks weighing hundreds and hundreds of tons. Morris K. Jessup, The Case for UFOs. The fact that these gigantic, almost finished blocks remain in the quarry and were never sliced up into smaller blocks and used in the construction of the Temple of Jupiter suggests to me very strongly that the Romans did not even know they were there. Most probably, they had been buried under many meters of sediment for many thousands of years when the Romans appeared on the scene. Graham Hancock, Magicians of the Gods. Archaeologist Friedrich Raget believes that marks left on the stones of Baalbek conform to a pattern of concentric circular swings made by some unknown quarrying machine. The radial arc exhibited by such an unknown device also exceeded the swing and force that could have been produced by manual human labor alone. Mr. Raget believed such a quarry machine had an adjustable and weighted arm that could extend to a radius of 13 feet, as evidenced by the largest radial marks left on some of the rocks. Some stones may have even been sawn using jeweled blades. M. Don Shawn, Elder Gods of Antiquity. On the subject of tools, it gets even stranger because some of the blocks are not made of local limestone, but of granite, of which no quarry has been found. Brian Furster, in his book Baalbek, Lebanon, The Stones of the Gods, notes, "The presence of the granite is curious because there are no large granite quarries in Lebanon. Granite has a hardness of 7 out of 10 on the Mohs scale of hardness. This infers that tools with diamond tips may have been used to shape the columns, and such tools were not in use until the late 19th century AD. The platform. The Great Platform served as the foundation for the Grand Temple of Jupiter, but it was not initially intended for this purpose. One hypothesis suggests that the stone platform was meant to support a temple structure far larger than the Roman temple. However, such a theory contradicts all known historical records about the Bekaa Valley, which saw little of note during the Bronze Age. These Roman temples were actually built on top of an ancient 5 million square foot platform that was made from some of the largest stones ever used in any construction project in the history of the Earth. How people in ancient times were able to move such massive stones is a complete mystery. Many of the architectural feats found at Baalbek cannot even be duplicated with 21st century technology. So how did they do it? Keep in mind that the base of the Baalbek ruins alone weighs approximately 5 billion tons. Michael Snyder, The Truth Wins. No modern construction cranes could lift the huge stones of the temple at Baalbek. It is also very likely that they knew the secret of gravitation and used it to perform levitation, something we cannot even explain today. Without this knowledge of gravitational control, our ancestors could not have built edifices of enormous stone slabs, which have been found all over the world. Maurice Chatelain. Our ancestors came from outer space. With their colossal size, it seems as if a mythical giant assembled them from enormous blocks. On that note, it seems a perfect opportunity to let you in on a little-known myth. The Cyclopses were one-eyed giants in Greek mythology. It was said that they built the city of Mycenae in Greece out of massive blocks weighing many tons each. This is why similar constructions found at Baalbek, Lake Titicaca, and elsewhere are referred to as having Cyclopean architecture. Who created the oldest sections of Baalbek? Roman builders, despite their achievements, lacked the engineering knowledge for such a feat. The same applies to the skilled Greek architects. In his Megalithomania series on Baalbek, Hugh Newman agrees, stating, "Modern scholars and academics champion the Roman claim on Baalbek. But did the Romans really have the capability to construct such a site? And did they even need to? There is an absolute absence of any Roman records to indicate that they did it. The biggest stone ever moved by the Romans was 323 tons, and its journey spanned the reign of 3 emperors. If we think within the official academic framework of history, Augustus had no obvious reasons for selecting Baalbek as the temple's building site. Supposedly, Baalbek was just a small city on a trading route to Damascus. It was of no special religious significance. Why then did the Romans pick the remote Baalbek? Baalbek Rome had found a fabulous ready-made foundation, a mighty platform to add a suitably majestic structure to, stamping the Roman eagle upon the whole for the perception of future generations. Jiri Mruzek, are the world's biggest building blocks prehistoric? One has only to look at the positioning of the Trilithon and the various courses of large stone blocks immediately beneath it, to realize that they bear very little relationship to the rest of the Temple of Jupiter. Moreover, the visible courses of smaller blocks above and to the right of the Trilithon are markedly different in shape and appearance from the smaller, more regular-sized courses in the rest of the obviously Roman structure. Stone blocks weighing up to 1,000 tons have led to hypotheses suggesting a lost race, such as the Atlanteans, may have had a hand in Baalbek. For ufologists, however, the mystery seems clear. They point to a biblical quote as a clue. "And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof, as the colour of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. And every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. And their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. And they sparkled like the colour of burnished brass." Ezekiel 1:4-7. This description clearly indicates the presence of extraterrestrial beings on Earth. The Soviet scientist Mikhail Agrest also believed that these stupendous constructions may have been the work of beings from outer space, the same visitors who, he thinks, may have caused the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah by detonating part of the nuclear fuel of their spaceships. In this way, what we may call legends of the astronautical era come to us in the form of echoes of the remote past. Peter Colissimo, Timeless Earth. Interestingly, in the past, Baalbek was known as a sacred place where the rulers and leaders that lived in the town would meet with the gods when they came down from the sky. When these gods came down, they were said to have landed in a cloud of smoke and brimstone, with a thunderous rumble that was felt for miles. Michael Sokolov, in his book Anunnaki History and the Role of Reptilian Aliens, states, "The platform's most fortified corner is built of several layers of colossal stone blocks. I have an idea how this platform was built. I suspect that the colossal stone blocks were lifted and made to float through the air like weightless feathers by an anti-gravity machine. Similar to how some people theorize a starship can warp the 4-dimensional space-time in the direction opposite to that caused by gravity as seen in Einstein's general relativity, effectively creating anti-gravity. If the Anunnaki were capable of such feats, it would help explain how they could have come here from Sirius or Orion." In his Earth Chronicles series of books, Zecharia Sitchin claims that a race of extraterrestrials called the Anunnaki came to Earth over 450,000 years ago in search of gold. In addition to surface mining, the Anunnaki used sophisticated water mining techniques to filter or process gold from the waters of Earth. If representatives of an advanced alien civilization visited Earth and spent time here, they might have constructed the stone terraces for unknown purposes, for something beyond the understanding of humans at the time. For example, these sturdy, flat platforms could have served as landing pads for interplanetary spacecraft. In a paper on Baalbek, Sitchin notes, "The Great Stone Platform was indeed the first landing place of the Anunnaki gods on Earth, built by them before they established a proper spaceport. It was the only structure that had survived the flood and was used by Enki and Enlil as the post-diluvial headquarters for the reconstruction of the devastated Earth. It is the only structure on Earth from before the flood." The Epic of Gilgamesh mentions a mountain in a cedar forest, described as the abode of the gods. They see the cedar mountain, the abode of the gods, the sacred throne of Ernini. Gilgamesh, Tablet 5. This mystery place was, in fact, Baalbek. Sitchin continues, "Gilgamesh, king of Uruk in ancient Sumer, went there circa 2900 BC to obtain immortality from the gods. Having been the son of the goddess Ninsun and the high priest of Uruk, Gilgamesh was considered not just a demigod, but 2/3 divine. This, he asserted, entitled him to avoid the death of a mortal. Yes, his mother told him, but to attain our longevity, you have to go to our planet, Nibiru. So Gilgamesh journeyed from Sumer to the landing place in the Cedar Mountains, where the rocket ships of the gods were lofted. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a text found inscribed on clay tablets, actually describes how Gilgamesh witnessed a rocket ship being launched from the landing place. A later Phoenician coin depicted such a rocket standing on a launching pad. Whilst Baalbek's earliest history remains unrecorded, its usage by aerial vehicles in Sumerian times has been clearly described in the Epic of Gilgamesh, writes Alan Alford in his book Gods of the New Millennium. The destination of Gilgamesh is clearly identified by the reference to the cedar forest. Today, the cedar tree remains the national emblem of Lebanon, and there is no doubt that in ancient times, Lebanon was famed for its ample supplies of cedars, which were used, for example, in the building of Solomon's temple. Readers of the ancient epic have been left baffled as to why it was necessary to guard these cedars 5,000 years ago. But the implications are obvious. This was a hugely important place for the Anunnaki. Henry Seyrig, who, as director of Antiquities of Syria, devoted a lifetime to the studies of the vast platform and its meaning, found that the Greeks used to conduct their rites of mystery, in which afterlife was represented as human immortality, obtained by the ascent heavenward of the soul. The Greeks, he concluded, indeed associated this place with man's efforts to attain immortality. Zechariah Sitchin, Stairway to Heaven. Those still holding the mythological interpretation of the gods are in an unenviable position. They find themselves having to hold that the same citizens of the first civilizations who, they claim, invented or hallucinated the gods through their primitive imaginings and naive proto-scientific projections of personality on the great forces of nature were the same primitives who somehow could build the stupendous Giza pyramid, somehow quarry, cut and move into place the 1,000-ton stones of the Baalbek temple, which even our modern technology cannot begin to lift. Somehow know the great precessional cycle of the heavens, the existence of all 10 of the planets of our solar system, and how our solar system was formed. Neil Freer, The Alien Question, an expanded perspective, humanity's past and the history of civilization remain incomplete, filled with enigmas and gaps. Just decades ago, the existence of the Hittites and Sumerians was doubted, but these peoples have since been proven real, along with their cultures. Who knows what will be discovered in the future? What is clear is that the civilization responsible for such monumental structures possessed technical capabilities far beyond what was thought possible in their time.